When it comes to modern history, you can trace it back to find one document, linking it all together. That document is the backbone of almost all of modern politics, and it's only 100 years old. 100 years might be a long while when thought about. However, for something this influential, only being 100 years old is strange. This important document is often referred to as the Treaty of Versailles. The ending of World War I and the signing of the Treaty of Versailles greatly changed Germany's rights towards its military. It allowed the Entente powers, also called Allied powers, to punish for infractions and treat Germany fairly with their new responsibilities. The treaty had quite a lot that it had to do, and it's hard to think about it fully and concisely. But to further outline what we will be discussing today, we will talk about how the First World War shaped the treaty, who the important people were for coming up with the contents of the treaty, what responsibilities the League of Nations gained, and what rights Germany and the other Central Powers lost. We'll also talk about the aftermath of the treaty and how it affects our lives now, as well as why the treaty failed.
In July 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand visited the city of Sarajevo. A Serbian assassin tried to kill Ferdinand. Ferdinand was shot, and Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia.
Austria-Hungary and Serbia called their allies in for the war. Germany and France were both called in. France had bunkers on their border, so Germany invaded through Belgium. This made Britain join the war. After more countries joined, the sides became... Oh wow. After a long conflict, the Americans joined the war, sending millions of troops. The Central Powers started surrendering as troops pushed in through the Balkans. After Germany had surrendered, they started work on treaties for peace. Because of this, influential world leaders and diplomats went to Versailles, France, to make a document to decide on Germany's punishments.
28 countries went to Versailles to sign the treaty, but 4 influenced it the most. They were Woodrow Wilson, President of the USA, David Lloyd George, Prime Minister of Great Britain, Vittorio Orlando, Prime Minister of Italy, and Georges Clemenceau, Prime Minister of France. Together, the Big Four made most of the decisions for the treaty. Because of how few people worked on the treaty and Germany not being included in the creation process, many believed that the Treaty of Versailles was unfair. They didn't like the amount of harsh punishments there were in the treaty.
The League of Nations was an organization set on creating international cooperation. It was created by the Entente powers at the end of the First World War. It was the League of Nations' responsibility to be fair to Germany and to punish infractions on the Treaty of Versailles. Since it was only the League of Nations' responsibility to create the treaty, it was far more unfair to Germany. Many believe it failed because of this alone. The idea behind the League of Nations was to, quote, to promote international cooperation and to achieve international peace and security by the acceptance of obligations not to resort to war, by the prescription of open, just, and honorable relations between nations, by the firm establishment of the understandings of international law as the actual rule of conduct amongst governments, and by the maintenance of justice and a scrupulous act for all treaty obligations in the dealings of organized peoples with one another agree to this covenant of the League of Nations." End quote. The Treaty of Versailles, Part 1, Introduction.
To state it in a more comprehensive manner, the League of Nations was an organization that was supposed to bring worldwide unity to the nations of the world. It was also there to enforce international law and to bring justice to the world.
The Japanese diplomat, Oichida Kosai, also insisted that Japan be treated equally to the Western powers to bring racial equality to Versailles. Sadly, however, this motion was rejected. France gained the territory of Alsace-Lorraine from Germany, Italy gained land from Austria-Hungary, Britain and France gained land from the Ottomans, and a portion of Germany's eastern land was given to Poland.
The Saarland was a territory that the League of Nations had to occupy. In exchange, they got to use the natural resources of the Saarland, most notably coal. Poland gained its independence from Russia, Germany, and Austria-Hungary. Poland would divide the German territory into 2 parts, leaving a smaller area called East Prussia isolated from the rest of the newly reformed Weimar Republic.
All of the colonial possessions of the German Empire were given out to the British or French Empire, depending on which colony was being given out. Quote, Article 119. Germany renounces in favor of the principal allied and associated powers all her rights and titles over her overseas possessions. End quote. The Treaty of Versailles. This quote shows that Germany's rights to colonialism were taken away via the Entente powers. This also added to the rights of the British and French empires.
The treaty ordered the demilitarization of an area controlled by Germany, the Rhineland, in an attempt to keep neighboring countries secure.
Quote, Germany is forbidden to maintain or construct any fortifications either on the left bank of the Rhine or the right bank to the west of a line drawn 50 kilometers to the east of the Rhine. End quote. The Treaty of Versailles, 1919.
Simply put, this quote explains the boundaries in which Germany may or may not create or keep up military buildings or areas.
Germany was forced into many military constraints, such as having limited factories to create munitions. It lost the rights to manufacture tanks, armored cars, airplanes, submarines, and poison gas. It also couldn't have an air force, and its military size was reduced to a mere 100,000 men.
Although the military restrictions were crushing to Germany, other punishments were imposed on them. For example, they had to pay the Entente powers 132 billion gold Reichsmark, which is equivalent to 32 billion US dollars. Currently, that amounts to over $600 billion, which economists said would be impossible for Germany to pay. Due to the treaty, the land was also given back to Poland. It was called the Polish Corridor, and it split Germany into two pieces.
There are a few other punishments that were put on Germany, such as small pieces of land being given to multiple countries, including Belgium and Denmark. Austria-Hungary was partitioned into Hungary, Austria, and Czechoslovakia, and some territory was ceded to Yugoslavia, Romania, Ukraine, Poland, and Italy. Hungary lost significant territory during the war. It lost about two-thirds of its territory at the end of the war to Czechoslovakia, Poland, Austria, Romania, Yugoslavia, and Italy. The Ottomans got their land partitioned into the Middle Eastern colonies of the British and French. Bulgaria also lost some land. Because of the debt put on Germany, the government decided to print more money to solve the crisis. Instead of the debt being resolved, however, it caused inflation to skyrocket. By 1923, the conversion rate was 1 trillion marks to a single US dollar. People bought loaves of bread for 4.6 trillion marks. The harsh punishments of the Treaty of Versailles inspired a rise of Nazism and was the large cause for beginning World War II. During the rise of Nazism, the Nazi Party did a multitude of things that disobeyed the treaty, such as getting more soldiers and creating tanks. They even took multiple pieces of land before the League of Nations stepped in. The League of Nations not punishing Germany for these infractions is one of the major reasons for why the Treaty of Versailles failed.
The Treaty of Versailles created a huge domino effect in history. It was one of the main causes of World War II, which led to advances in technology and the Cold War. This partly caused the collapse of the Soviet Union. Decades later, it led to Russia wanting Ukraine back and the war in Ukraine. The following is Kaiser Wilhelm II's opinion on the Treaty of Versailles. Quote, "Let no German ever forget this, nor rest until these parasites have been destroyed and exterminated from German soil. This poisonous mushroom on the German oak tree." End quote. Kaiser Wilhelm II, December 2nd, 1919. This quote shows that Kaiser Wilhelm, the King of Germany, disliked the Treaty of Versailles. He would have likely had a positive influence on it if he were included in the drafting. This could have prevented the rise of Nazism and the failure of the treaty. While Germany strongly disagreed with the Treaty of Versailles, the League of Nations was all for it, but this was likely because they made it and had full control over it. To recap, the Treaty of Versailles played a tremendous role in the past 100 years. It helped cause World War II, the Cold War, and advanced technology. There are still multiple other examples of the treaty's role, such as the rights and responsibilities it created. Germany's rights were greatly affected by the Treaty of Versailles. They lost many pieces of land as well as military rights. The treaty also allowed the League of Nations to punish Germany fairly if they disobeyed the treaty. So next time you think about the Treaty of Versailles, try and make a connection between it and modern-day items or beliefs.